Well, hello again from here at Whitley Park, where thankfully the temperature has gone up, but sadly so too has the wind speed. Yeah, it's pretty blustery, uncomfortable surrounds here inside my little dugout slash studio. And on the subject of uncomfortable surrounds and viewing from a dugout, well, last weekend down at Manchester City for Eddie Howe was just that. And I was pretty strong in my post-match video, throwing it back on the players. And I think I used a phrase in that, some of what we saw was uncharacteristic, and a user picked me up on it and were right to do so, because is it uncharacteristic? The fact that I think there's maybe 4 or 5 occasions now when I have stood post-match and questioned the commitment and the application of those players, some of the body language, the aggression, the bravery. How can you do that 4 or 5 times during the course of a season and then pass it off as, well, actually, on the whole, they're largely pretty good. It is uncharacteristic. Well, no, it's not. This now is a recurring theme, and you've got to ask yourself, why? Why does it keep happening? Why is it threatening to blow a hole in Newcastle's season? Now, after the game down at City, we said, have they got one eye or 2 eyes even on the Carabao Cup Final? Because if they do, that is actually taking their eye off the biggest prize of all for Newcastle this season. And it's a problem for Eddie Howe now. It's one he rejects in a way, and I think he's got to do that. I asked him the question there again. I said, down at City, you said you needed a week to digest whether the Cup Final had a bearing on those performances. He laughed and he said, given I said I need a week to digest, I knew you would revisit and ask him a thought. He said, well, for him, the Cup Final in the isolation of last weekend isn't irrelevant. And he went through everything we've just spoken about in terms of bravery, out of possession, in possession. They just weren't at the levels which they had set during that 9-match winning run. Now, while the manager is right to try and attempt to park all talk of the Cup Final, I think he's got to do that. I still believe that even on a subconscious level, that it may be there in the minds of the players. And the reason I say that is, if you compare the 2 finalists, well, for Liverpool, I don't think their players will give the Carabao Cup Final a second thought until the week of the game. Before then, they're chasing the Premier League. They've got Champions League to contend themselves with. They'll be in the week of the Cup Final. Okay, what's next? It's Wembley on Sunday. Let's go. It's different for Newcastle, and that is a byproduct, even if it is subconscious, of how much the Cup and that effort to earn the 70 years without a domestic trophy means up here. It is everything. The players are thinking of that. It's different for a club like this, and Eddie Howe has got to try to manage that. Every player knows that to be part of the team who does eventually one day, if ever, bring home that trophy, your legacy is guaranteed up here. That is huge, and really, your legacy is only guaranteed if you are part of the team on the day. Think of Jimmy Greaves back in 1966. So to that end, for players who know that their place in the team is perhaps guaranteed come what may when they get to Wembley, Anthony Gordon, Sandro Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, Alexander Isak, are they realistically, regardless of what form they're in, are they going to be dropped for the game at Wembley? Probably not. So because of that, are they not more concerned, and I come back to this phrase, even if just subconsciously, are they not more concerned right now with protecting fitness rather than form? Is that why we saw them come off it against Manchester City, when those levels of aggression and intensity and putting their body on the line and going that above and beyond for the shirt, for the club, for the badge, just wasn't there? It wasn't at all. There was an absolute drop-off compared to what we saw in that Carabao Cup semi-final against Arsenal. How can that be? That has got to be something inside the mind, because physically they're still in the same place. There wasn't the excuse of tiredness. They had the full week to prepare for the game. None of them are carrying injuries. Physically, they're all in a really good place. So it's got to be something psychological. And I think that's potentially an issue for Eddie Howe between now and the Cup Final. We saw it 2 years ago. The 3 games between the semi-final and the final, there was a drop-off. Newcastle took 2 points from 3 matches. It's an even bigger issue this time around, because there's 5 games between the semi-final and the final. And if Newcastle continue to go the way they did, as you can hear the wind picking up there and Mike Quiff taking flight as well, if they continue like that, the season, the Champions League, all that will be done by the time they get to Wembley. And also, you can't just switch it on and off like a tap. If Newcastle put themselves in a bad place, form-wise, mentality-wise, the general feel around the club, in the stand, supporters, they're going to arrive at Wembley like they did last time. And I've said this in recent videos. We went into the game down at Manchester United. I did my pre-match video. I said I thought they'd get beat. I can't believe I said that. Well, the risk they've got this time is they're heading the same way mood-wise if performances and results like last Saturday persist between now and then. Because the reality is this as well, that yes, the cup final is huge, it's massive, it means so much for all the reasons we know. But the bigger picture, really, and you might not want to hear this, but it's the reality of it, the bigger picture for the club is the Champions League. The Champions League allows them to then give those players who may or may not be looking at a move away in the summer, to give them the money they perhaps want and the money they perhaps deserve. It allows them to go out and attract a better calibre of player in the summer. It allows them sponsorship-wise from an ATP, PSR perspective to put more money on the end of those contracts if you are a Champions League club. It automatically increases revenue streams. It puts Newcastle in the bracket they need to be this super club who fills potentially a 70,000-seater stadium. So yes, I'm not downplaying the Carabao Cup Final, but if they take their eye off the ball between now and then, and the upshot is the Champions League chances of qualification, well, they go to pot. Well, that really is more harmful for me than losing a cup final. So they do have to now find a way to get that focus and to get that message back across, that what they've got between now and Wembley is huge, if not even bigger than what awaits against Liverpool. Now, by extension, on a similar subject, I wrote a story this week that was the back page splash on the Daily Mail, that Newcastle, there's a determination inside the club to send a message that even if they don't make the Champions League, these players aren't going to be sold. Newcastle, from that PSR standpoint, because of the business they did in January and the business they haven't done in terms of incomings, are in a relatively strong position. They don't have to sell these big names to satisfy any sort of shortfall this time. And the attitude inside the club, and this is where they're at now, is that no, even if they don't make that top five, I keep on coming back to that, wow, they're never going to have a better chance for me to get in the Champions League, given there are a couple of big clubs falling away. I get sidetracked there, but that just goes back and emphasises the point I made about the opportunity in front of them. But even if they don't, they finish 6th, 7th, 8th, wherever it may be, there's that will, that want, that message. No, they're going nowhere, and that is sending a message to rival clubs who may be looking at their players, Isaac, Gordon, Kamaris, whoever else, to those intermediaries who might just be angling their clients for moves come the summer, and to the players themselves. I think out of all of that, the most important message is to send it back into the dressing room. If you want to play Champions League football next season, well, you've got to achieve it here. And to do that, it needs your full focus on the games that are coming up. Forget about Wembley, forget about interest from Arsenal, Liverpool, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Paris Saint-Germain, whatever it may be. You're a Newcastle United player right now, and that's where your focus has got to be. And that is my interpretation of the message. And it was one, if you were asking me to deliver a message to those players, given what I saw down at Manchester City on Saturday that wasn't good enough. That is the message I would send to them. This is your focus now. It's Newcastle. What did JFK, that famous quote, what your country can do for you, what can you do for your country? Replace the word country with club, and I put it back on the players. It's up to them to find this response now. And when they've needed that response, we saw it post Fulham and other games, when they've had that drop-off and there's been those back to basics weeks on the training ground, they've always responded to that. And I think they're good characters. I like these players. I've got an awful lot of time for them. Anthony Gordon, someone I've spoken a hell of a lot about, having sat down with him a year ago. That character. Alexander Isak, that run he went on after the difficult start of the season. Bruno Guimaraes, the captain. They're good characters in there. They didn't show that last Saturday down at Manchester City, and that would be the worry. So now it's back on them to show a response in what is a huge, monumental game against Nottingham Forest this Sunday. Eddie's just spoken about that in there. There's a little bit of a negative feel given they've dropped off from 4th to 5th down to 7th, but they're still only 2 places and 2 points beyond that top 5. They're only 6 points behind Nottingham Forest. That would be 3 with victory on Sunday. So this is massive. Forget the cup final. This now is huge, and that speaks to the Champions League and that need and that opportunity to make the top 5 this season. Now, where are we at team news-wise heading into Sunday? Now, I revealed in my Newcastle Confidential column yesterday that Sven Botman, he was a major doubt. There's lingering pain there in his knee. Well, Eddie's just confirmed to us inside Botman won't make the game, and that's a big blow, given the physicality of Botman and Joelinton, and that standard they set was absolutely missed last weekend down at Manchester City. Botman won't be available, Joelinton won't be available either. Better news on him, there was a little bit of concern with regards to the cup final. I think Joelinton might be back for the Brighton game in the FA Cup next weekend. That would then give him 2 weeks to build up before that game against Liverpool. And that's important. I wouldn't want to see Newcastle midfield in the final. I'm distracted myself here by talking of the final. I'm going back to everything I said we shouldn't have done. But I wouldn't like to see Newcastle midfield without Joelinton at Wembley. I don't like seeing the Newcastle midfield without Joelinton any week. So that's good news on that front, even though he won't be there this weekend. Botman, well, it is a little bit of a concern given everything there was last season. Now, Eddie Howe's just said to us inside there, he said, no, it's a different scenario to last year. There's just a little bit of lingering pain there. They do expect him to be ready beyond this weekend, but then they said the same last weekend. So until he is free of pain, Sven Botman, I suppose it's a case of wait and see. Now, what will they do team news-wise? Well, two little bits of news off the field this week. Martin Dubravka signed the new contract. Emil Kraft signed the new contract even. A lot of guys come back to me and said, well, why was the wording different on the two statements? Well, okay, let's address this now. Emil Kraft, it was said, 1 year contract extension until next summer, 2026. Martin Dubravka, it just said it's signed a new contract, and the wording was a little bit ambiguous within his own quotes. I'm happy to have extended my stay at the club. Did that mean from January until the summer? Well, my information is the contract does run until 2026, so it is an extension in that regard. But yes, there probably is a reason it was fudged. I think there might just be an agreement that if Martin Dubravka has an offer on the table in the summer to go, that Newcastle might not demand a fee for that, and they will honour what would have been the scenario in January or again this summer by him committing to stay beyond January as they needed him to. That was the right decision at the time, and he still is in goal in between the posts. Now, will he be on Sunday? I think it's reaching decision time now for Eddie Howe, just as it is for me with what do I do? Do I push it back up? Come on, let's hope it lasts until the end of the video. Decision time with regards the goalkeepers. Because I've said this before, when Newcastle are playing well, and they're not having to do much defending or goalkeeping, Martin Dubravka is the better goalkeeper. Better with his feet. I like him in that regard. He can pick a pass, he can drop balls into midfield in a way Nick Pope can't. When Newcastle aren't playing well, and there's more defending and more goalkeeping to do, I prefer to see Nick Pope in there. And to that end, might we see Nick Pope return on Sunday? My own thinking now is that we might just, but that's Eddie Howe's call, and thankfully it's not mine. What else is there in the midfield? I think Joe Willock on the back last week, come off an half time against Manchester City. He's just not there. He's not the player we know he can be. You know, is that a mental, a physical thing? Does he actually need a run of games? Do you leave him in and let him build that? Or do you look at it and take him out? I think Eddie might just be edging towards Louis Miley on Sunday, and that for me would be the right call. The other big choice is right back, Kieran Trippier or Tino Livramento. Now, 2 weeks ago, I said, got to leave Trippier in there. Let him build form and fitness and belief and confidence in himself after that wonderful display against Arsenal. He had a torrid first half down at Manchester City and might, against the pace of Alanga, Gibbs-White and those players Forest have got, might he just bring Tino Livramento back in? Again, that's Eddie Howe's decision. Personally, for me, I want to give Trippier that chance, but in the isolation of this game, given what Forest have got, it might just be better if Livramento does come back in. Now, what do I think is going to happen on Sunday? Well, ordinarily I would look at this in the form Newcastle are in, 3 defeats in the last 4, 2 defeats at home in the last 2 against Fulham and Bournemouth, and I'll be guarded against predicting a Newcastle victory, but I am, and the reason I am is the theory that Forest are better suited away to home. Absolutely, you know, you can apply that to it, given they like to sit in, they've got a 5 in midfield, they play on the break. But the last 2 away from home, they've lost, and they're beaten badly at Bournemouth, and they lost to Fulham last weekend. So I think this idea that Forest are bomb-proof on the road, well, that's not true. And I come back more to Newcastle, forget about Forest. When they've needed those big responses this season, when there's been that blanket of criticism and analysis all week, and there has been this week, externally and internally, these players, they normally turn up. And if Isak and Gordon and the big players, that's what makes the difference, because when they are on it, that filters down, they drag others up to their level. It really sets the standard. I threw Tonali and Guimaraes into that too, because Tonali and Guimaraes were on the missing list last weekend. That's got to be different. So if they turn up, they perform, I'm predicting a home victory. And wow, that is so badly needed in the context of the Premier League table and where Newcastle are right now. Now, with a little bit of news to bring you this week, and this was from my Newcastle Confidential column yesterday. If you go in there, I'll put the link in the description below the line. The James Trafford deal for the summer. Now, Martin Dubravka has just signed a new contract. That doesn't mean he's going to stay beyond the summer. My information is there's real confidence now that that one does happen. So again, please click on the link. It'll outline all the details in there. There's an update on Jacob Murphy and the approach from Nigeria, what his stance is on that. And also, Newcastle this week, they have signed a player, a Leyton Orient wonder kid, a 14-year-old. Again, link in the description below the line takes you through with that. He's actually already made his debut for Newcastle and won a player of the tournament prize this week. So yeah, exciting developments off the pitch in terms of those incomings beneath first team level. A lot of hard work going on there. We're still expecting Antonio Cordero from Malaga to come in as well. So lots of work in that regard. But for now, that is for tomorrow. For today, Newcastle have got a huge game this weekend. And then again, down at Liverpool, you know, don't underplay that one. It might be written off as a Carabao Cup dress rehearsal, or what that phrase we use. It's not. It's a Premier League match with the Champions League and for Liverpool, the title on the line. So yeah, a huge 4 or 5 days coming up for Newcastle. I'll be there at St James's Park on Sunday. Please, for now, leave your comments below the line. Hit like, hit subscribe, interact. Tell me what you think of everything I've explored in this video. How can this team who we think so much of put in a performance like Saturday and in other games at times this season? Will they get that response on Sunday? Let me know what you think, and I will see you from St James's Park in 2 days' time. Okay, take care, guys. Bye-bye.